Have you cleaned up your child's diet, removed the junk food, food coloring, maybe even removed gluten and dairy? Well, what if I told you that what you're taking away is less important than what your child may actually be missing? Because for many children with ADHD, it's not just about removing foods, it's about figuring out which nutrients they are missing that their body needs to function properly. So instead of more restriction, the answer may be targeted nutrition. Hi, I'm Monica Perez Garcia, a registered dietitian specializing in children with ADHD. And in this video, I'm going to explain why removing foods alone may not be enough to help your child's ADHD symptoms. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the research that we have on diets and ADHD. And so one of the biggest studies that we have is called the INCA study, and that looked at children being on a very specific food-restricted diet. And after several weeks on this diet, many of the children, about 2/3, had a major reduction in symptoms, and many of those children were no longer considered to have ADHD. The second study is the TRACE diet done in 2024, and this followed children for a longer period of time. It was for about a year, and half the children were on a special elimination diet while the others were on just healthy eating diet. And at the end of the study, they learned that only a quarter of the children were still on an elimination diet, and that they had better outcomes with the children following the healthy eating diet. So what do these studies mean for us? It means that food does matter, and it does play a role in your child's symptoms. However, it also means that elimination diets are not the solution, not the only solution anyways. And so it's very important, if your child is going to follow an elimination diet for a short period of time, that they do it under the care of a qualified healthcare practitioner. And the reason for this is because elimination diets can backfire, and they can actually cause more nutrient imbalances, which is what we're trying to avoid. And so the reason for this is because anytime we eliminate a food group, we're also eliminating the different nutrients that those foods offer us. And so when we remove one or several foods, which is what happens on these elimination diets, then we are specifically removing lots of nutrients the body needs. And so this needs to be carefully done and only for short periods of time. And it's also important to note that this can cause eating disorders in certain children. And so it must be done cautiously with the help of someone that's qualified or a registered dietitian. And so now I want to talk about the 3 reasons why removing food alone is not the solution. And so number 1, which is the most important one, is nutrient imbalances. So in order for the body to function properly, we need lots of different nutrients constantly. And so I see this as being the root cause for many children, because many are not getting all of the nutrients they need. Some are picky eaters. And the truth is that the quality of our food today is lacking in a lot of the nutrients that we used to have many years ago. So the food quality has gone down, and we know that our children's diets have now increased in the amount of processed foods, which don't have a lot of these nutrients. And so including that and adding in environmental toxins and lots of stressors on the body, which means we need more nutrients, means that our nutrients are getting out of balance. Less food quality, less nutrients coming in, and higher needs. And so this is really the step number 1 on why our children cannot remove food successfully, because we need these nutrients to digest and process foods. And so many of these foods contain chemicals, natural chemicals, that the body needs to eliminate. And when the body is not functioning properly, for example, they're not methylating, which we know is a common issue with children with ADHD, that means that their body cannot successfully process things like salicylates or glutamate, so many of the different things that we've heard about. So we need these nutrients to process these chemicals. And if our child does not have them, then they build up in the system and they cause symptoms. We see symptoms of hyperactivity and aggression are very common when we have a child that cannot process food properly. So nutrition imbalances is number one. And you're going to see for number 2 and 3, the nutrition imbalances actually affects the other one. So this is our most important starting point. So reason number 2 that removing foods alone is not helping your ADHD child is gut issues. And so it's very common for children to have issues in their gut, primarily due to nutrient imbalances that we just spoke about. And so we know that the gut needs several nutrients to function properly. So for stomach acid, which is one of the first steps in digestion, we know that the body needs lots of zinc and magnesium and sea salt and a few other ones to make enough stomach acid. So if we're missing even one of those, then that's not happening. And the reason we need stomach acid is because we need it to digest food. And if this food is not being digested, it means that it's going further down in the gut and feeding pathogens and bacteria that we don't want fed, which results in overgrowth. And it also means that they're not breaking down their food, so they're no longer absorbing all of the nutrients that these foods have, or even the supplements that we're giving them. So they're not absorbing nutrients and they're feeding pathogens when we're missing nutrients for proper stomach acid. We also know that the gut lining needs certain nutrients as well to be working effectively. And if the gut lining is not tight and there's little holes in it because we don't have enough of the nutrients to keep it tightly secured, certain foods can exit the gut and enter into the body, causing the body to have an immune response and causing lots of inflammation. And so this compromised gut lining, or also known as leaky gut, is one of the main causes of food sensitivities. And so when we don't have enough nutrients, the gut can't function and we end up getting food sensitivities. And I want to point out that food sensitivities are not considered a root cause. They're considered a symptom of a leaky gut. And so we need to address the gut instead of just removing the foods that are causing sensitivities. So reason number 3 that food alone is not helping your child's ADHD symptoms is toxins and infections. So we often see things like mold or Lyme or even parasites that could be causing your child's symptoms. And those need to be addressed first before anything else can be done. And we need to consider toxins like heavy metals that are in our environment. And we see this all the time when we run hair tests, that many children will have a buildup of heavy metals that we know cause neurological issues. So things like lead and mercury or even uranium, which are in our environment. They're in our drinking water, they're in the soil, and they're also in certain food products or tainted supplements. And so these are very common. I see them very frequently, almost every time actually. And so these need to be addressed. And I also want to point out that the reason why some of these things happen is because of nutrient imbalances. And so when your child is depleted of nutrients or low in nutrients, it allows other things like heavy metals to get inside the body. And so when your child's nutrition status or their tank is full, it leaves less space for these things to enter their body. So nutrition imbalances, number 1, we talk about again, so important. So we talked about the 3 main reasons on why diet alone is not working, but I also want to mention what does work. And so lab testing or functional lab testing is a way to help us identify if any of these things that I spoke about are going on with your child specifically. And truthfully, this is the only way to know, because a lot of these things cause similar symptoms. So just because your child is experiencing mold toxicity symptoms, it could also be something like a heavy metal issue. And so the symptoms overlap. So lab testing is going to specifically give us answers on what we need to target. And testing is also important because we want to target supplementation. And so supplementation is something I will frequently discuss because it's very important, and supplements are a big part of the healing strategy, but they need to be used strategically. And so I see a lot of healthcare practitioners giving advice on certain supplements that your child absolutely needs without knowing your child's specific body. And this is misinformation that could cause more harm than good, because without knowing what your child specifically needs, we can give them high doses of something that could actually throw off other nutrients. And so the nutrients work together. Some work synergistically, some push the other ones away. And so whenever we are taking high doses of any one thing, it's going to impact other nutrients. And so it's crucial, before we give these types of supplements to our children, we need to know why we're giving them and what the cause is. So just blind supplementation is not something that I recommend. I also want to point out that supplements carry a certain risk that no one talks about. Everybody thinks that they are natural and there are no side effects, but that's not necessarily true. So first, many of these supplements are synthetic, so they're not the exact nutrients that our body needs, and sometimes that causes issues. And other times, some of these supplements are actually tainted, or they sell counterfeits online, and they could affect other organs in the body. So it's not to be taken lightly. And I try to steer parents away from just giving large doses of any one nutrient unless we know they specifically need it. So does food matter? Absolutely. Super important. Nutrition is number one in my book. But just removing foods or putting your child on a special diet is oftentimes not enough. So if you want to learn more tips for your child, you can go to my bio and download my quick start guide for ADHD that talks about 6 different things that you can do to help your child naturally to reduce their ADHD symptoms. Just remember, your child's brain isn't broken, it's just out of balance.